All right, so we are diving into a book that's got fantasy romance readers buzzing.
Oh,
From Blood and
yeah.
Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout.
Yes,
This one has really split the crowd.
it has.
Some are obsessed and others are, let's just say, less enthusiastic.
Yeah, definitely a love it or hate it kind of book.
Exactly. So we are here to help you figure out if it's worth your time.
Absolutely.
We've got a mountain of reviews and even the book's Goodreads page itself,
Oh, wow.
which, spoiler alert, is a battlefield of opinions.
All right, well, here's the bottom line up front. From Blood and Ash is a fast-paced, addictive read if you're into dominant heroes and steamy romance.
Oh, yeah.
But it does have flaws, especially when it comes to writing style and character depth. So if you're looking for a nuanced fantasy world and complex relationships, you might want to proceed with caution.
Okay, so fair warning issued.
Yes.
Now let's break down why this book is so polarizing.
Okay.
First up, the writing style.
All right.
One of the biggest complaints we're seeing.
Yeah.
Lots of reviewers mention overuse of ellipses.
Yes, the ellipses are plentiful. It's almost like Armentrout wants to create a sense of breathless anticipation.
Oh.
Like Poppy's always on the verge of something,
What?
whether it's a revelation, a danger, or, a steamy encounter with Hawke.
Right. There's definitely a lot of emphasis on anticipation and yearning,
Yes.
but some reviewers found it distracting, almost like it interrupted the flow of the story.
Yeah, and then there's the repetition.
Oh, yeah.
Phrases like, my blood sang, or descriptions of Poppy's stomach constantly dipping and churning appear over and over again.
Okay, I have to admit, when I saw multiple reviewers complaining about Poppy's stomach, I was like, really?
Yeah.
Is it that bad?
Well, it does become a bit of a running joke.
Right.
It's almost as if Armentrout is trying to emphasize Poppy's heightened senses and emotional state.
What?
But it can come across as a bit heavy-handed.
Interesting. So maybe it's a stylistic choice, but not one that works for everyone.
Exactly. And that seems to be a recurring theme with From Blood and Ash. It's full of stylistic choices that are bold and engaging for some readers, but completely off-putting for others.
All right, so writing style aside, let's talk characters.
Okay.
Poppy, our heroine, is presented as this strong, independent maiden,
Right.
but some reviewers found her actions didn't really match up with that description.
Right. There's a bit of a disconnect between how Poppy is described and how she actually behaves. She's constantly told she's smart and capable, but then she makes decisions that seem impulsive and, well, not that bright.
Like sneaking out to a tavern in disguise,
Yes.
which predictably leads to trouble.
Exactly.
It feels a bit like the rebellious princess trope we've seen in so many other fantasy romances.
You're hitting on a key point here.
Okay.
While Armentrout attempts to give Poppy agency and a rebellious spirit, she often falls back on familiar tropes that undermine her character's depth.
So not exactly the groundbreaking heroine some reviewers were hoping for.
It depends on what you're looking for. If you enjoy a feisty, passionate heroine who's driven by her emotions, you might find Poppy relatable.
Okay.
But if you're seeking a truly complex and nuanced female character, you might be disappointed.
Okay, fair enough. Now, let's talk about the other half of this romance equation.
Yeah.
Hawke.
Oh boy, Hawke.
Oh, boy.
He's definitely a polarizing figure.
Yeah.
Some readers swoon over his mysterious charm and protective instincts,
Mm-hmm.
while others find him controlling and possessive.
Yeah, the reviews are full of strong opinions about Hawke.
They are.
Some call him a book boyfriend dream come true. Others, well, let's just say they use the word problematic a lot.
And for good reason.
Okay.
There are definitely moments where Hawke crosses the line into controlling behavior.
Yeah.
For example, he often disregards Poppy's wishes, insisting he knows what's best for her.
Right, like when he tells Poppy how she'll react to his touch before she even knows herself.
Yes.
That definitely sent up some red flags for me.
And then there's the age gap, which is revealed later in the book and adds another layer of complexity to their power dynamic.
Yeah, that definitely threw a wrench in things for a lot of readers,
Yeah.
especially since the book won a major romance award.
It did.
It definitely sparked a conversation about what's considered acceptable in the genre.
It raises an important question. Is a relationship truly romantic if there's such a significant power imbalance?
Right.
It's something readers have to grapple with as they get deeper into the story.
Okay, so we've got a potentially problematic hero and a heroine who's not quite as independent as she seems.
Yes.
What about the world they inhabit? Does From Blood and Ash create a truly immersive fantasy experience?
That's where things get a little trickier. Armentrout does create a unique world with its own mythology and creatures.
Okay.
But the world building itself can feel a bit uneven.
A lot of reviewers mention the info dump problem.
Right.
We get a lot of details about the world, but it's often thrown at us in large chunks, and
Yes.
the overall picture remains fuzzy.
Right. There's a sense that Armentrout is more focused on the immediate plot and romance than on developing a truly fleshed out world.
Like the ascension process, for example.
Yes,
It's central to the story.
it is.
But the details are vague and confusing, and the magic system, it feels like it's there more for dramatic effect than as a well-defined element of the world.
Exactly. It's almost like Armentrout is relying on familiar fantasy tropes without fully exploring their implications or giving them depth.
Okay, so we've got some uneven world building, a potentially problematic hero, and a heroine who might not be everyone's cup of tea. Let's be honest, this isn't sounding great so far.
Right.
But this book is huge at E. People are obsessed.
I know.
So what's the deal with the romance? Is it that good that it overshadows all the other issues?
The romance is definitely a driving force in From Blood and Ash.
Oh.
It's steamy, intense, and full of forbidden love tropes that readers tend to devour.
But we already know Hawke's identity from pretty early on.
You do.
There's not a lot of mystery or suspense in terms of who he is or how they'll end up together.
That's true. The big reveal isn't exactly a surprise.
Right.
But many readers find the journey to that inevitable ending enjoyable nonetheless.
Okay.
The chemistry between Poppy and Hawke is undeniable, and Armentrout knows how to write those heart-pounding, tension-filled scenes.
But it's more about the journey than the destination.
Exactly. It's about the slow burn, the stolen glances, the forbidden touches. Armentrout builds that tension masterfully, and for many readers, that's enough to keep them hooked.
Okay, I see the appeal, but for those of us who are maybe a little less enthusiastic about installist and dominant alpha males, is there anything else this book has to offer?
Well, it does tap into some classic fantasy tropes that resonate with a lot of readers.
Right.
The chosen one narrative,
Yeah.
the fight against a corrupt power structure,
Right.
the discovery of hidden magic.
Right, it's got that classic good versus evil storyline with a healthy dose of romance thrown in. Reminds me a bit of A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas.
There are definitely similarities, particularly in the strong female lead who discovers her true power and the brooding protective love interest. But Maas tends to delve deeper into the complexities of her characters and world,
Okay.
while Armentrout keeps things more surface level.
So similar vibes, but maybe not as much depth.
Exactly. If you're looking for a book with more nuanced world building and character development, Maas might be a better choice.
Okay.
But if you're looking for a quick, addictive read with a focus on romance and action, then From Blood and Ash might hit the spot.
Right, so we've unpacked the writing, the characters, the world building, and even touched on some comparisons to other popular books. So at the end of the day, is From Blood and Ash worth the hype?
It really depends on what you're looking for as a reader. If you enjoy fast-paced fantasy romance with a dominant hero and steamy scenes, and you're not too bothered by predictable plot points or some writing quirks, you'll probably find yourself swept away by From Blood and Ash.
Okay, so it's a guilty pleasure kind of read.
For some, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the kind of book you devour in one sitting, even if you're rolling your eyes at some of the tropes.
But if you're looking for something more thought-provoking,
Yeah.
with complex characters and a unique world to explore, this might not be the best fit.
Right. There are other books out there that offer a more nuanced take on fantasy romance.
You mentioned Sarah J. Maas earlier. Besides A Court of Thorns and Roses, are there other authors or books you'd recommend to someone who's intrigued by the premise of From Blood and Ash, but wants something maybe a little more sophisticated?
Absolutely. If you're interested in a more intricate magic system and a heroine who's a bit more of a strategic mastermind, you might enjoy The Kingmaker Chronicles by Amanda Boucher.
Okay.
The romance is still there, but it's balanced with political intrigue and a well-developed world.
Okay, that sounds interesting. Anything else?
If you're looking for a slow burn romance with a morally gray hero, The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller is a great option. It's got a witty, captivating voice and a heroine who's not afraid to go after what she wants. So a little less yearning and a little more action.
Exactly. And if you want something truly unique with a blend of fantasy, romance, and mystery, you could check out The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab.
Okay.
It's not strictly a romance, but it does explore the complexities of love and immortality in a really beautiful way.
Okay, those are some great recommendations. It's good to know there are alternatives out there for those of us who might not be fully on board with the From Blood and Ash hype train.
And even if you decide this book isn't for you, The passionate debate surrounding it is fascinating in itself.
Right.
It tells us something about what readers are craving right now.
Mm-hmm.
Intense emotions, escapist fantasies, and maybe a little bit of guilty pleasure reading.
Right. It's not just about the book itself. It's about what his popularity says about the fantasy romance genre as a whole.
Exactly.
So, final verdict time. Should our listener dive into From Blood and Ash?
If they go in with the right expectations,
Mm-hmm.
they might have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
It's a page-turner with a captivating romance in a unique world.
Even if it's not the most nuanced or complex book out there.
But if they're looking for something that will challenge them intellectually or emotionally, they might want to set this one aside and explore some of those other recommendations.
Exactly. It's all about knowing what you're looking for and finding the book that best fits your reading mood and preferences.
Okay, so there you have it. We've explored the highs and lows of Priscilla. From Blood and Ash delved into its strengths and weaknesses, and even offered some alternative reads for those who are looking for something different. Now it's your turn, dear listener, to decide if this book is worth your precious reading time.
Happy reading.
Mm.
So we've established that the writing can be repetitive and the characters have their flaws.
Right.
What about the world they inhabit?
Yeah, it does. From Blood and Ash create a truly immersive fantasy experience.
That's where things get a little trickier. Armentrout does create a unique world with its own mythology and creatures like the Craven and the Wolven,
Okay.
which are interesting twists on classic monsters. But the world building itself can feel a bit uneven.
Yeah, a lot of reviewers mention the info dump problem. We get a lot of details about the world, but it's often thrown at us in large chunks, and the overall picture remains fuzzy, like what exactly IS, the ascension process, how does magic work? It's all a bit vague.
Right. There's a sense that Armentrout is more focused on the immediate plot and romance than on developing a truly fleshed out world. It's like she sprinkles in just enough details to pique our curiosity, but leaves a lot of unanswered questions.
Well, it's more about the feeling and the intensity than the intricate details.
Exactly, which for some readers is enough. They're swept up in the romance and the fast-paced plot, and they're willing to overlook the lack of depth in the world building.
Okay, so we've got some uneven world building, a potentially problematic hero, and a heroine who might not be everyone's cup of tea. Let's be honest, this isn't sounding great so far, but this book is huge. People are obsessed. So what's the deal with the romance? Is it that good that it overshadows all the other issues?
The romance is definitely a driving force in From Blood and Ash. It's steamy, intense, and full of forbidden love tropes that readers tend to devour.
Okay, but we already know Hawke's identity from pretty early on. There's not a lot of mystery or suspense in terms of who he is or how they'll end up together.
That's true. The big reveal isn't exactly a surprise, but many readers find the journey to that inevitable ending enjoyable. Nonetheless, the chemistry between Poppy and Hawke is undeniable, and Armentrout knows how to write those heart-pounding, tension-filled scenes.
So it's more about the journey than the destination.
Exactly. It's about the slow burn, the stolen glances, the forbidden touches. Armentrout builds that tension masterfully, and for many readers, that's enough to keep them hooked.
Okay, I see the appeal, but for those of us who are maybe a little less enthusiastic about installist and dominant alpha males, is there anything else this book has to offer?
Well, it does tap in some classic fantasy tropes that resonate with a lot of readers. The chosen one narrative, the fight against a corrupt power structure, the discovery of hidden magic.
Right, it's got that classic good versus evil storyline with a healthy dose of romance thrown in. Reminds me a bit of A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas.
There are definitely similarities, particularly in the strong female lead who discovers her true power and the brooding protective love interest. But Maas tends to delve deeper into the complexities of her characters and world, while Armentrout keeps things more surface level.
So similar vibes, but maybe not as much depth.
Exactly. If you're looking for a book with more nuanced world building and character development, Maas might be a better choice. But if you're looking for a quick addictive read with a focus on romance and action, then From Blood and Ash might hit the spot.
All right, so we've unpacked the writing, the characters, the world building, and even touched on some comparisons to other popular books. So at the end of the day, is From Blood and Ash worth the hype?
Okay.
So we've laid it all out, the good, the bad, and the steamy BUT. Here's the thing that I keep coming back to. From Blood and Ash is crazy popular.
Yeah.
It sparked a whole series. There's a massive fandom. People are downright obsessed with it.
It's true. The book has tapped into something that clearly resonates with a large audience, and that in itself is worth examining.
Exactly, because even if this specific book isn't for everyone, its success might tell us something about what readers are looking for in fantasy romance these days.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is that From Blood and Ash seems to embrace those classic, almost primal tropes.
Mm-hmm.
The dominant alpha male, the innocent but spirited heroine, a world of danger and desire. It's almost like a modern fairy tale with all the darkness and intensity dialed up.
So maybe it's tapping into a desire for escapism,
Perhaps.
for those heightened emotions and that forbidden love element.
Or maybe it's simply riding a wave of trends we see in other forms of media,
Okay.
where strong, assertive heroes and steamy romance are front and center.
It's like those trends have seeped into the fantasy world,
Right.
creating a new kind of reading experience, one that prioritizes thrills and instant gratification over complex character development or nuanced world building.
And for many readers, that's exactly what they want.
Yeah.
They're looking for a book that will sweep them away, make their heart race, and leave them wanting more.
So maybe From Blood and Ash is less about revolutionizing the genre and more about giving readers what they crave, a pure dose of escapist fantasy with a side of sizzling romance.
It's certainly a possibility, and regardless of where you stand on the book itself, it's sparked a conversation about what readers want from fantasy romance and how the genre is evolving.
Right, and that's what makes this whole deep dive so interesting. It's not just about dissecting one book.
It's not.
It's about understanding the larger trends and desires that shape the stories we love.
Exactly. So, dear listener, we leave you with this.
Okay.
Is From Blood and Ash a guilty pleasure, a sign of the times, or something else entirely?
Right.
We've given you the tools. Now it's up to you to decide.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into From Blood and Ash. Until next time, happy reading.